You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Wednesday, the 28th of February. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens.
And on the show today, Where is Kate Middleton is trending all over the world and the theories are wild. Also, do women just want to earn less money? A very different gender pay gap conversation. And do you need a little treat? Just a little one. Just a teeny tiny one.
Always.
Of course you do. Welcome to small treat culture. But first, Jessie.
In case you missed it, there is a word for the phenomenon of mishearing and then repeating a phrase that is completely wrong. For example, you might have heard a Kardashian say, "I could care less." What they mean to say is,
All
"I
Americans
couldn't care
say
less."
that.
It is so annoying. It doesn't mean the same thing. You might have heard someone say, "This is my brother-in-law constantly, for all intensive purposes."
Yeah, no.
It's for all intents and purposes. That's a very different thing. In one foul swoop. No, it's in one fell swoop of utmost importance. It should be of
Of utmost importance, people say.
It kind of makes sense.
Casting nasturtiums.
Yeah. I've definitely been guilty of them. I often, when I'm writing, I have to Google it, and that's where I came across the term eggcorn. And the word eggcorn is the repetition of a misheard phrase. So it's called an eggcorn because a language expert who was writing about this told the story of a woman who always called an acorn an eggcorn and just kind of went with it, which is just a perfect example of this phenomenon.
Language is fluid and they do look a bit like eggs, so it's fine.
Yeah, you put it together and you go, oh, that totally makes sense. It happens in writing a lot. I've noticed it in news articles and I'm like, that's
And in
not
song
it.
lyrics.
Yes.
A scapegoat, people say, instead of a scapegoat. But you
Oh,
can
a
understand
scapegoat.
why, like a scapegoat, like a
goat
goat
who's
that's trying to
escaped.
escape. It's kind of cute.
We asked people in the Mamamia office if they've been noticing this, and here are some of their favourite eggcorns.
So mine is the word sandwich. I always say sandwich. I used to say sandwich as a child and my parents thought it was really cute, so they never corrected me. And this is now the result of a 27-year-old woman saying sandwich. And now my parents just look at me and they cringe so hard.
For the longest time, I was saying in one foul swoop. It's not that, which really blew my mind. It's in one fell swoop.
When I first met my husband, I went with him to the regional South Australian town of Port Pirie with him, where his family is from. And just in chats, I realised that they were all saying, "I'm used of it," like I'm used of it. And I was like, what are you guys saying? And they were like, "Whatever, snob. What do you say?" And I was like, "I'm used to it," which is grammatically correct. They're like, "Nah, I'm used of it."
My pet peeve is when people say nip it in the butt instead of nip it in the bud.
Who says nip it in the butt?
Nip it in the butt.
Problematic.
It works.
Where is Kate? I'm talking about the royal one. Because we live in a world where that question is trending everywhere and people have a lot of theories. Now, I want to put out there before we get into this that obviously where the Princess of Wales is none of our actual business. I'm going to give you some of the really outrageous theories because they're outrageous and we can almost laugh at them rather than, the sort of more serious ones that are trying to delve into her health history. But for example, some people have theories that she's being held against her will, that she's trying to leave, and that she's being locked in a dungeon in the palace somewhere.
Oh, she's trying to do a Meghan.
Yep. Some people think she's left William and she's undergone radical facial reconstruction to lead a new life.
Yep.
Is she being cloned for AI purposes to provide the royals with a whole line of perfect princesses for generations to come?
Why Kate? Why would they not be doing that to, say, Charles or something?
Well, because
she's perfect.
Okay.
Because
He's
Kate
not.
is perfect, seen as a perfect royal in many circles. And if you've been paying attention, you'd know that earlier this year she went into hospital for abdominal surgery. That's what they said. And they said, please respect privacy. And she still has not been seen and people are getting twitchy.
I read this. She hasn't been seen since December.
She hasn't been seen since December. If you fall into the conspiracy theory hole, people are like, there's no footage of her going to or from the hospital. There's been no footage of her children. Everybody's really like leaning into the mystery of this.
But didn't they say when they announced she was having abdominal surgery and that they wouldn't be commenting further on, you know, the details of her health condition, didn't they say she's not going to be doing any public engagements until after Easter?
Yes.
So why are people suddenly, like, this is the timeline that they laid out at the beginning?
Because I think a lot of people, A, have short memories and B, are just very sus on the idea that she needed this much time off. This tweet is quite typical. It's like, you're telling me that Kate Middleton, the same woman who posed outside the hospital like a freaking supermodel mere hours after giving birth, suddenly requires months of recovery before showing her face, and the British press is just respecting this privacy?
People are awful.
Feels sinister. Exactly. And so I want to get to this thing about the British press respecting her privacy, because that is also upsetting a lot of people.
That they're respecting her privacy.
Yes. So we didn't like it when they don't respect privacy. We don't like it when they do. But just on the theories, obviously they've got to Buckingham Palace enough that they did release a little update just today, literally just saying the Princess of Wales continues to be doing well. But the theories kicked up because Prince William was supposed to be going to a memorial yesterday for his godfather, who happened to be the King of Greece, samesies, and he didn't go, saying for personal reasons he wouldn't go. And lots of senior royals did, the ones who could, Camilla, Anne, and even problematic Uncle Andrew. And everyone's like, what personal reasons could they be? My question to you is, some people are saying that this level of privacy and respect for privacy would never have been afforded to Meghan Markle. So that's also digging into the conspiracy. Is there such a thing as too much privacy for your public image? Mia?
We're very conflicted, aren't we? And I imagine the royal family are conflicted too, because when your literal job is to be a public figure, when you are paid by the taxpayer to be a public figure, it doesn't mean that it's access all areas, and there are certain understandings and agreements between Buckingham Palace and the press, which is why even if there had been footage taken of her arriving at hospital or leaving hospital, those images wouldn't have been published. Firstly, because there would have been a backlash to them, but also because we don't see paparazzi photos of the royal family. That's part of the understanding with the royal rota, and that's the system that Harry has talked about. He refers to it as being in bed with the media, but in actual fact it's an agreement saying we'll give you this access, you can come to this event, we will supply you with these photos of the kids every so often that we've taken, these formal portraits, to feed, let's be honest, the consumers of media are their subjects. They're royal subjects. They're the people who essentially pay them and want to know what's going on with them and see photos of them. But in exchange for that access, you will not publish photos of us out of hours. Paparazzi photos, that's why you don't see them.
Yeah, I reckon this is indicative of the relationship between Kate and William and the press, is
which
what we're
Harry
saying.
would say is further proof of the conspiracy that they're involved in with the press, that he wasn't afforded.
I reckon they're probably right about Meghan, because Meghan and Harry...
But no, we didn't see, when she was a member of the royal family, we didn't see paparazzi photos of them either. We didn't. It's only since they've left that you lose the access to that sort of arrangement and that privilege by their desire. They said, we don't want to be part of this system anymore.
It didn't stop them endlessly harassing her in other ways, though. And it is actually quite noticeable that even though I just went through all these ridiculous conspiracies, none of them are really like on the front page of The Sun. Do you know what I mean? Like the media, the mainstream media, in inverted commas, is being respectful of Kate's privacy, as they should be, of course. But, you know, they might not have taken pictures of Meghan when she was a princess, but there were a million stories every week about what she was or wasn't doing, what she was eating, how she was decorating her house, how she was treating her staff, in a way that is not happening for Catherine.
And for a different celebrity, a celebrity that wasn't a royal. I think they would fill this silence with something.
I think everyone's being very careful because it's a health issue.
Yeah, but think about celebrities who have health issues all the time, and it's wrong. But I think that I'm wondering whether there are sections of the media who know more, who might have a little bit of an insight and know to back off, because even the children haven't been photographed. There has been a real respect here. But almost more interesting is that I think this says something about our relationship with health that a lot of people can relate to, which is that it's funny how with any health issue, everyone's very respectful and yep, wish you well. But we're very impatient. And then it's like 2 weeks pass and we're like, are you better? And if not, what is it? And that's what I feel as though people are kind of screaming at Kate. We deserve to know exactly what it is, because until after Easter, what could it possibly be? But anyone who knows, I remember when my dad had a stroke, people want updates. There's often not really an update.
Yeah.
But when something serious health-wise happens, it's a really long time, and we're not used to that.
That's true. And I think also to the point of that person who's saying, you know, she rolled herself straight out of bed after having a baby and stood there for us. We like that narrative, particularly for royals, but for all kinds of famous people, that they'll push through and they'll turn up. And although they're being very respectful around this, there also feels like a bit of, well, that would be nice, wouldn't it, to have 3 months off? You know, and just be lying around in your palace.
Oh, wow. I didn't get that read on it.
The comparison that I was thinking of is to Amy Schumer, who recently made a television appearance. She was promoting something. She's sort of said since that she would have rather not be promoting it.
But it was her show. She really passionately believes in it. It's called Life and Beth. It's the second season of a show that she writes and stars in. It was coming out, so she had no choice but to be on the circuit.
She had to, and she sat for interviews, and the internet yelled very loudly, "You look different, what's wrong with your face," essentially. And she posted saying, "I'm having some hormonal issues, I'm having some health issues." And it turns out that she has something called Cushing's syndrome, which you can see.
It's a hormonal imbalance and it causes a swelling. It can cause lots of different things. In her case, it's caused a swelling of the face.
Yeah.
And she says that it will resolve on its own, but she only got diagnosed with it after all of these comments were made.
Oh, did she only get diagnosed then, or was she hoping to be able to, you know, not have to go public with a really private issue?
I think she was in the process of getting tests and she knew something was wrong hormonally, and then after that she almost felt like she owed an explanation of why she looked that way. But you can't win. So you come out when you're not well and everyone yells, "Why don't you look like yourself?" Or you hide and people yell, "Come out, where are you?"
Mamamia out loud! 19%. That's the national median gender pay gap, meaning across the country, for every dollar a man makes, a woman earns 81 cents. Some big brands had relatively small gender pay gaps, like Myer at 1% and Aldi at 5.3%. Of the big four, Commonwealth Bank had the largest gender pay gap, favouring men at nearly 30%, while Qantas had a 37% gap and Virgin 41.7%.
I want to have a nuanced conversation about the new gender pay gap report. So the Workplace Gender Equality Agency, otherwise known as WGEA, has released data for the first time that measures the pay disparity between men and women in Australian companies. The figures are based on data reported to WGEA between April 2022 and March 2023. If you're like, yeah, we knew we had a gender pay gap, why are we talking about this? Well, this is the first time that companies in Australia with more than 100 staff have been made to be transparent about their salaries. The UK did this back in 2017. They forced companies to publish salary disparities. And since then, the gender pay gap has begun to narrow. So transparency has been seen as being really helpful in closing the gap. So what did the Australian data show? Over the course of a year, it was found that the median total earnings for a woman is $18,461 less than what a man is paid. Airlines were found to have significant pay gaps, as well as banks and a number of brands aimed at women and who employ a disproportionate amount of women. So,
can I ask a question about whether it was comparing like with like? Like, was it comparing just everybody that worked in the company at Qantas, for example? Is it comparing the pilots and the CEO with the person who is a baggage handler?
Well, Qantas came out and they said, we have a statement, right? And Qantas said, the pay gap does not mean women are paid less than men to do the same jobs at Qantas and Jetstar, but shows there is a significant underrepresentation of women in highly paid roles like pilots and engineers across airlines globally. They say that they are working hard to encourage more women into pilot and engineering roles, but due to the years of training required, improving the gender balance of these work groups will take time, right?
Because the way it works, right, Mia, is they go to a company and they get all the men who work in the company and they line up, not literally, obviously, that would be problematic, probably. They line up all the men's salaries and then they take the median. So not the average. I mean, this is math stuff, but the average would skew, like if CEO earns 20 million would skew that.
And we're not looking at the CEO, right? No, we're cutting him or her out.
So the median amount of money that a man earns, and then they line up all the women. And importantly, if somebody, man or woman, works part-time, it's then calculated to a full-time salary and they take the median of that.
I never remembered the difference between average and median, but I believe you.
It's the middle.
Okay.
Think of a median strip.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help me, but I
Not
remember
so
a teacher
much.
saying that.
Yeah.
Dozens of companies have more than a 50% gender pay gap. Jessie Googles, what does that mean? Well, it means that for every dollar a man is earning, a woman is earning 50 cents. Of the nearly 5,000 companies, 61.6% had a gender pay gap that favoured men. So obviously we've heard what someone like Qantas has to say, but in terms of working out what's going on, research by KPMG found a few things. Their research says women occupying caring and domestic roles, looking after children, for example, that accounts for about 1/3 of the gender pay gap.
Do you mean because they work less paid hours?
Or they might be out of the workforce.
Yep.
The second is about women are less likely to negotiate for a higher salary, and if they do, they face backlash or punishment for it. The main driver, they say, is industrial and occupational segregation. Women are overrepresented in low-paying industries. Now, National Senator Matt Canavan said this on Sky News when he was speaking with Paul Murray.
It does perpetuate these ridiculous diverse and equity and inclusion policies in corporate workplaces, which do just breed resentment among especially young men. And I see it with young people all around me these days who are attracted to the poisonous ideologies of Andrew Tate and his ilk. Yep. It is perpetuated by this nonsense. Well, if there is a problem with women being paid less, let's identify who is doing that and take them to court, because that is illegal. That's what we should be focused on, not dividing our society into genders, into races, into all of these different artificial categories which do nothing but divide us.
I don't know if they're artificial, those categories, Matt.
The Canavans of
I don't think Matt
the
thinks
world.
they're artificial either.
No.
And this is the thing, you are going to hear this argument everywhere. They're going to say not having equal pay in a company is illegal. If you have two positions that are the same, and that's a man and a woman, and they're sitting next to each other, it's illegal, and you can take your...
And it has been for about 50 years.
Exactly right. So people are going, I'm not understanding this gender pay gap. You might have someone say, women want flexibility. They will turn down the promotion, they step out of the workforce, and therefore they miss those 3 promotions. I've had a friend say to me recently, he works in finance, and he says, we are trying to get more women in the boardroom. And they're saying they're turning the roles down. Holly, do they have a point?
I don't think they do have a point.
I can't believe it.
I don't think they do. I think this is such a lazy argument, and very predictable from the likes of Matt Canavan, who's a national senator who loves a provocative quote, loves to get himself on the front pages of the provocative quote, and that's his job.
He's called it the Andrew Tate recruitment drive,
Yes,
this report.
Because he's saying that, you know, young men hate this because what they see coming at them is an idea that, well, I'm about to get paid less because the women want to get paid more. And it's like...
Or lose my job because
Matt,
they need to hire a woman.
Not what's happening. And it's also not the problem we're trying to address here. Everybody's right. And what Matt Canavan is right about is that it is illegal, as you've just said, Jessie, for 2 people doing the same job to earn different money because of their gender. But what this is exposing is a much more systematic division. And the only way to change it is to shine the sunlight on it, right? Which is what's happened in Britain and in other places, is that if you've got a place where the men all have the senior roles, there may well be cultural reasons for that. There may well be historical reasons for that. As Qantas is saying in their case, for example, it's true now that more women are going to university than men, but that hasn't been true for the past 20 years. So there are some industries which it will take a while for that to trickle through, but it doesn't account for all of this. And cultural issues about using your own bias to promote people who are like you and who you understand is very common and happens all the time. The thing about studies like this is they are really important in making us ask why. And some of the answers aren't easy, but they still need to be asked, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's great to be having these conversations. I think that the easy thing to do is to say, this is the fault of business and this is the business's fault and they just need to fix it. I think what we're rightly upset about The factors are not just about the businesses, they're about society and our culture.
Yeah.
So businesses can't fix the fact that women are predominantly the caregivers in our society and that women will predominantly take time out of the workforce to have children and care for them while they're young. That's not something that a business can fix. It's not. And I'm not saying that we don't need to address it as a society, but it's multi-layered. It's not as simple as, because I also have experienced what it's like as an employer to have women say, I don't want to work full-time, or I don't want to do that job, or I don't want that promotion.
Well, research has shown that some women will prioritise flexibility over income.
There was a study last year of 1,000 workers who reported, and this isn't just about having children, this was post-COVID when people were looking at the flexibility that they wanted. Nearly 50% of respondents said a flexible schedule was more important than their salary. I've read a lot of studies like that for women, flexibility obviously is an issue for everybody, but for women, if you can say to a woman you'll have flexibility and you'll be in control of your hours, they will accept less pay. It's more of a priority for them to have control of their hours when their children are small or when they have caregiving responsibilities.
It just feels like such victim blaming to me, this argument, because that might be true for a very small percentage of corporate jobs, but also the work revolution that we're seeing everywhere right now is a pushback against this very traditional idea that there's only one way to have a big, high-paying job. And it's this very, very male dynamic where you work all the time, you're constantly available, and there is no flexibility. But that's shifting. That's beginning to shift in lots of different ways. So that will talk about a certain portion of this where they're saying, well, women don't want those top jobs because they don't want to work that hard. I would question culturally whether a lot of women have actually a choice in that at all, because somebody's got to look after their children. And then the other part of this is that a lot of women who are taking on flexible jobs, say shift work and contract work and non-full-time roles in a different industry, aren't necessarily choosing that. That's just what businesses want to give them, because in service industries, in caring industries, that's the work that's available. They don't want to give you full-time work. So there are a whole lot of levers at play here.
Yeah.
I really reject this very straight binary that women just don't want to work that hard.
And I reject the idea of that being victim blaming, because I understand that would be an easy thing to do. But I think context is important. And saying this is just as simple as it's not fair what's happening at work. There are so many factors at play here. A lot of feminists have identified that equality has hit a certain ceiling until what's acceptable for men changes as well. So women can't get out of those caregiving responsibilities until it's seen as desirable and socially acceptable and financially smart for men perhaps to be taking time. But also,
so it's a jail.
I don't know the answer to this, but I also want to raise the fact that it's not that every woman is just gagging to get back to work full time after having a baby. And I don't see that, I'm going to generalise, I don't see that same conflict in men. I wanted to work flexibly when all my children were small. My husband didn't. He never did. He never wanted to.
I think that's changing a lot because culture is changing a lot. We're seeing the parameters for what is a good father changing a lot.
Yeah.
Because again, time is ticking along and all these very well-qualified women, ambitious women are entering the workforce and they want to do it differently. That doesn't mean that they necessarily want to work like a bloke. The idea that business can't make their workplaces more female-friendly to attract high performers at the board level or whatever it is nonsense. Of course they can.
But there's still a certain number of hours in the day, Hole. Like you can offer somebody flexibility, but it's hard to be a CEO when you want to work 4 days a week. Or 3 days a week.
For sure, but I don't think that CEOs are the issue.
No, but I'm giving you an example of when we're talking about in these sort of executive level jobs, perhaps when full-time is a requirement of those jobs.
What happens with data is that this was 5 million Australians that this covered, right? There are 5 million stories. And so what this speaks to, Holly,
but that
I
makes
understand.
It seem like it's everybody's choice.
No,
and
no,
that's not
it's
true.
not. It's not.
No.
What I'm trying to say is that this data comes out and the media interprets it. What I'm struggling with are the echo chambers and the silos that exist. And you've got Matt Canavan over here and you've got someone else saying women aren't encouraged to negotiate. All of these things, like multiple things might be true at the same time,
and they are,
right?
I'm sure.
For example, I have a friend who works in politics and she works day in and day out to get more female candidates up, and she can't. So let's say a female candidate would be genuinely paid more. She has lots of them that she can point to and she cannot get them up. There is a ceiling there that she's struggling with.
Because women don't want to go into politics
No,
because
they're there. The party won't take them on.
This is
Yeah.
So
there's
that, right?
Exactly.
The other
ceiling.
context that I'm seeing this from is someone who has an 8-month-old who is sitting in a mother's group and looking at women, some who feel pressured to go back to work, some who do want to go back to work, some whose partners, their work is not flexible or they're earning enough to look after the family. Whatever it is, there are all those sort of different stories. But what did come out of this research was that one thing that really, really helps a workplace when it comes to closing the gender pay gap is a diverse workforce.
Yes.
So the worst ones were actually when you have like a workforce that's 90% male, for example. So what you need is diverse in lots and lots of different ways, authentically diverse. And that's when things get better.
almost every man, if he has 10 children or no children, he's likely to have an unbroken record of employment in terms of being continuous. Most women will have broken records of employment if they've had children because they've gone part-time, they've taken a year out, they've decided to scale back and go part-time for a while even after they've got kids. So all of those things, they've taken lower paid jobs at lower levels so that they have more of that flexibility.
And that's some of the story, but it's not,
Yeah.
it's not
Not
all
all of the story.
And that's
No,
the
I
thing,
agree.
And it, a study like this comes out. It's the first time it's ever happened in Australia that they've actually named, published the results of big companies. And it's being so easily dismissed by people as going, well, it's not really true because this. It is true. This is data. This is fact.
No, it is true.
So it's the Matt
course it's
Canavans
true.
who are saying this is just why men don't like women anymore because the women are always twittering on about how they don't get paid enough, and it makes us feel bad that they keep twittering on about how they don't get paid enough. It's like, these are facts, this is data, and it can be fixed. And as we've seen in Britain, the gap can close. It's like politics, as you just touched on, is one of those issues that we talk about all the time, about how that workplace and the way that it's structured is so incredibly unfamily friendly for men and women. Is the answer that we want to be governed by a whole lot of people who don't have any family responsibilities, or is it to change the culture? And that's the point of all of this, is if we want to close the pay gap and we want to see more women, making the most of all these qualifications that they're killing themselves getting, then work culture in lots of different places has to change in different ways.
And caregiving, even though it might be a woman who puts her hand up for it, I heard someone on ABCRN basically saying, yeah, but caregiving, whether it's for children or it's for ageing parents, isn't a job that exclusively belongs to women. It is them who put their hands up, but that's a mixture of socialisation. It's a mixture of who else is doing it. I know in our family, when you have an ageing parent who's sick, who's the first person, it's a woman who will take time off.
Always.
And that's contributing to the gender pay gap as well.
Mamamia out loud.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop new segments of Mamamia Out Loud just for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get your daily dose of Out Loud, and a big thank you to everyone who is already subscribed.
So this week I tried not to buy myself little treats daily to save money. And I learned that when you don't have a little treat daily, you're left with misery.
Has little treat culture gone too far? Well, therapists have thoughts. When was the last time you had a little treat? If you're a woman, it was probably today.
This morning.
You may even have had more than one. Maybe you bought yourself a cupcake when you were out doing the grocery shopping as a little treat because grocery shopping is boring. Perhaps you then went home to catch up on some work and paused to watch an episode of Downton Abbey when you were halfway through your work as a little treat because your work is hard and also sometimes boring.
Okay, that's you.
Yeah, that's
you,
you.
because
So
you're
she's-
obsessed with
yeah.
Downtown Abbey.
You're watching
That was just an example.
Downtown Abbey.
I just egg-corned, didn't I?
It's so not downtown.
Downton?
I thought it was downtown as well. A little treat is defined as a small and inexpensive pleasure, an external reward to help motivate yourself to complete unpleasant but necessary tasks, of which life is full, we must say.
Absolutely full, particularly for women, some might say.
Now, this is not new. So there's something called the lipstick index, which will be familiar to many people, and it is about this phenomenon that when times are economically tough and cosy lives means that we can't afford big, nice things like holidays or new clothes, we buy little treats like a lipstick or a nail polish.
Did the gender pay gap report make you think you need a little treat?
I did. I had to read that and I thought this was quite boring. There was a lot of statistics. I need a little treat.
I was like, well, life is hard.
Now I'm going to watch Jennifer Aniston do a workout video.
Yes, that's it. Sometimes little treats aren't necessarily buying things, are they? They're doing things.
Although, we'll get to that. A 2022 article in the New York Times posited that the rise of treat culture may have been a response to the ongoing helplessness and grief that defined the pandemic. Because speaking of a time when even the most basic things like seeing our friends and family or leaving our homes were not available to us, we had to find some little treats like serums.
Yes, serums, a lot of parcels arriving at the door.
That was my little treat. But has it gone too far? Well, as one viral tweet put it, little treat culture is getting out of hand. You don't need an $8 coffee because you did laundry. Or do you?
I
don't know.
I think you definitely do.
Sometimes you do.
I
Maybe
reckon
not $8, but
women seem more into little treats than men. And I was thinking about this and I was like, is it because
we have to do more drudgery?
Or because being a man's a little treat? And you wake up and you're like, I've woken up. Yes, the little treat. I'm getting paid more.
Every day is a little treat.
Whereas women are like, I need to constantly give myself a little treat. And there's a few things going on with that. I think it's a bit subversive because being a woman is often about deprivation and martyrdom and restriction and all the things you don't do. You kind of don't want to be seen as wanting. And so there is something...
Don't be greedy, Veruca Salt.
Yeah.
I want one. I want a golden goose.
Something about going and buying yourself a cupcake is like, I don't know, a big finger up or something. We've been doing in our household every Sunday, we get burgers. And that's my little treat for Sunday. I didn't do anything.
For Sunday night.
For a Sunday, I haven't achieved any. What, I've got to the end of a weekend? I cannot tell you, it makes my Sunday.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my goodness, I bloody love it.
Hole, you've always loved a little treat.
Love a treat. My mum taught me when I was young, I'm sure I've shared this epic wisdom on the podcast before. The secret to a happy life is a series of small treats. That's what my mother has always said, and she is 100% right. Because even if the treat isn't something you buy, and if I'm working from home, I literally structure my day like this. I'll be like, if I write for 2 hours, then I can XYZ. It might be, if it's a Friday afternoon, have an Aperol.
Oh.
If it's a Tuesday morning, a nice coffee.
Have an Aperol. No.
Little treat.
Or it might be I get to go for a walk, or it might be I get to go on the exercise bike, or, you know, even those things are treat, like anything self-care-y.
Sorry, you get to go on an exercise bike. That's your little treat?
It's self-care, right?
God, your bar's low.
I know it is. But it could also be I get to buy that thing. But I think that we should hold on to this and not be shamed for it, because it is the absolute antithesis to that. We talked about this last week, that sort of stoic, monkish tech bro philosophy about wringing every bit of productivity out of life at all times at the expense of joy, like our friend Brian Johnson we spoke about last week, who eats all his meals by 11:30. And it's like, if you want to be a serious person, pleasure is overrated. I'm like, no,
it's not.
Life is short and life is hard. And why would I get out of bed and do anything if I didn't think I was going to get a little treat for it?
I think we have to be a bit critical of the little treat. As much as I'm into it, and I think, you know, we all deserve it, the way that this has been used and exploited by
capitalism
yes,
is worth
and here
acknowledging. We're back at capitalism.
My question here, actually, and the one that I wrote to throw to you was, Jessie, is this capitalism's fault?
It's because it's
what
the
if
framing
your little treat
of
is
it.
a walk?
Well, that's great, but often it's not, is it? It's the classic like beauty thing about you deserve it, you're worth it, all that kind of stuff. And women are sold little treats in a way that men aren't as well. And I'm wondering, chicken and egg.
Maybe they just get what they want when they want it, and they don't feel bad about it or frame it as a treat. Maybe they're just like, I'm going to take that golf
Yeah.
day. I'm going to buy that stupid gadget that I've wanted. Brent, 25 pairs of walking pants. Like,
I'm very good at giving myself a little treat. The thing about little treats
I think
is
that's
where
you
it's
like
an
Westfield.
act of, I do. It's an act of feminism, really, giving yourself a little treat. It is.
I bet they say that on the bags.
Because
When you tap your card, they say this is feminism.
It's about being self-sufficient. I'm not going to wait for anyone else to buy me flowers or do something nice for me. I'm going to do it for myself because it's an act of self-love. Do you want to know the actual proven benefits?
Please.
This is what therapists say of
please
little
do.
treats. Celebrating small wins can be beneficial in a world where we tend to over-focus on big outcomes.
We do. We do that.
Like, so laundry, little treat.
Yep.
Small treats can act as positive reinforcement and create positive feedback loops for healthy habits. Yeah? So I'm going to go for a walk, but I'm going to listen to out loud while I go for a walk as my little treat.
Little treat.
They can also boost motivation and emotional well-being in the moment, which can foster a sense of achievement. I like this too because I think so much of women's work is never done, whether it's scrolling the internet or parenting or going to work. Or feeling inadequate. We have a long list.
And you need pause here for treat.
Correct.
And then pause here for another treat.
like little mice in an experiment.
Well, one of the things about this is, are you like one of those delayed gratification or instant gratification people? Because I'm very treat motivated like a puppy.
Yes.
And
I am
so
too.
I'm like, if I do that, I'll get that now. Whereas some people will be like, no, it'll be a bigger treat to me if I don't buy the flowers or the coffee because at the end of the month I could buy myself a dress.
Something.
Well,
yes.
that, when therapists are talking about the bad side of it, that is one of them. So they say, of course, becoming dependent on external rewards can start to really reduce your internal motivation. So if you're like, I'll have a little treat after I do laundry, as opposed to it's just basic human decency not to have dirty underpants strewn all over my house and wear them inside out.
Yeah.
Everything has to have an external motivation. It also has too much focus, as you just said, Hol, on short-term gratification. But the definition of short-term and long-term gratification is an interesting one to probe because for some people, like when you said, I'll write for 2 hours and then I'll have a little treat. For some people, it's like, I think a good 20 minutes.
I'll reply to an email.
The Pomodoro technique, you work for 20 minutes and then you have a little treat. And that little treat might be just, I'm going to get up and basically I'm going to stop doing that thing I don't want to do after 20 minutes.
And do something I do want to do for 5 or something.
Exactly. So the idea of waiting until the end of the month for the little treat. So what they're saying is that our length of time before we need a little treat, we're working in smaller and smaller increments. And also the level of discomfort or boringness or unpleasantness of whatever it is that requires a little treat is getting lower and lower. So once upon a time, it used to be after my mammogram, I'll go and get myself a nice coffee and some banana bread. Now it is after making the appointment for my mammogram, I will buy that eye cream that I really want.
Yes. I want Out Louders to tell us what your little treat is because sometimes I'm like, I want a little treat, but what do I want?
Oh, yeah. My fridge is full of little treats.
Oh, chocolate. I have to have chocolate every day just as a little treat for being alive.
Dips and things that I like, that just I like, no one else in the house likes. So just like, that's time.
Yeah. I want the Out Louders. Please let us know in the Mamamia Out Louders Facebook group. What is your little treat?
I think I'm going to have a little piece of chocolate as a treat because I got all my work done today. Do you want one? No, I didn't really do anything to deserve a treat today. Okay, but did you get up this morning? Yes. Then you deserve a little treat just for existing.
I have a quick recommendation for anyone who has to buy a present in the next future. Maybe it's Mother's or Father's Day or like someone's birthday. Look, this is the best present I've bought in recent years. It was incredibly popular. It is a T-shirt from a place called Threadheads. You might have seen, I posted a picture on Instagram and I had so many people message asking where it was from. And for Christmas, I made my dad a T-shirt. It's like a band T-shirt, like imagine like an AC/DC T-shirt, but with Luna's face all over it. So it was like close-ups and like weird facial expressions. And then it said in text on the front, Luna's grandpa. And then I also, for my cousin.
She's very thoughtful.
Aren't I thoughtful?
Much more so than I thought.
Well, can I just say what I did? I made wrapping paper, which I got at Officeworks.
Yes.
I made you can do it on the computer from Officeworks and they either send it to you, you pick it up, with Luna's face all over it.
It was so fun.
You're a lot of But this bar is high. I barely wrapped any presents in newspaper this Christmas.
It's the novelty of the first grandchild in the family.
I also
It'll
got
wear off.
My cousin Simon, who I've talked about, who has an intellectual disability. He has trouble saying his name, but he'll often come up to you and say, Holly, Holly, Simon, 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 and people can't understand. So I got him a shirt with pictures because he loves his own face. Like he loves pictures of himself, with pictures of himself, and it says, "Hi, I'm Simon."
Oh, that's so
people
great.
can see that he's Simon.
And they can say, "Hi, Simon."
And they can say, "Hi, Simon," and he
Does
just
he
gets
love it?
Oh my goodness, he wears it.
That's so smart.
Every day. The pictures of him, and it's pictures of him at musicals. Oh my God. Anyway, I am the most popular cousin.
Great.
So Threadheads, you go on, it's sustainably made graphic tees. You design them online. I don't know how to design anything. You upload a few pictures. It's so easy. And it's $49.95. Not that expensive. Like you could get a crap t-shirt for that much.
And my recommendation is to do it now. So you know how you just said Mother's Day, Father's Day, but do it now while it's in your head, because I always get caught short. And it's like the day before and I'm like, I've got nothing for this person's birthday or whatever. So I just buy presents when I think of them or when I see them.
I aspire to be that person who has like a present drawer.
Yeah.
One day I will be, but that's very good advice, Mia Freedman.
It's honestly, you should do it for your parents or something, Holly. Just pictures of you.
Or
Pictures
just
of
get
us.
one of yourself as a little treat.
We'll make Mamamia Out Loud t-shirts just for us.
Yeah.
I will put the pictures of
and
the
it'll make
t-shirts.
us look really famous, like we've got more merch.
Yes. Exactly. Be like, this is our merch that I made on Threadheads.
exactly.
I will put pictures in this week's newsletter so you can see what they look like.
Penis.
Out loud, as we need to talk about penises, and in fact we did. We spoke about why we are seeing them more in movies and TV.
Do we like them?
I
we
think
like it?
we coined a new term. This is in our subscriber episode yesterday. We coined the term full frontal flaccid.
Yes,
Yep. Yeah, we did.
The full frontal flass.
Triple F.
Let's hear a little bit of our conversation.
I wonder if this kind of slightly mocking thing we have about it, whether we're talking about Barry Keoghan's penis or I was talking about Michael Fassbender's penis or whatever, we wouldn't talk about women's bodies like that anymore.
A naked woman looks the same in a sexual context and a non-sexual context because her arousal is internal. You can't see, except maybe for erect nipples, but that could also be because she's cold. Whereas I think what we're seeing in film now is non-sexual depictions of men's penises. A link to that episode will be in the show notes. You know you want to hear.
Why wouldn't you? Thank you for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman. There's been audio production by Leah Porges, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and you want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There's a link in the episode description.